Hi, everyone. My name is Muaz Mustafa, and I am so proud to be back here. I have not been to this church, which has been a partner of SETF and a friend of the Syrian people for almost a decade. And I've not been here since the fall of Assad, Iran, Russia, and soon the enduring defeat of ISIS in Syria. And it's just surreal, honestly, to be here. I wanted to just, start off by saying, it feels like a miracle what happened in Syria. But for the longest time, when there was absolutely zero hope, when Syrian news became just kind of news wallpaper, it was normal that there's war and constant atrocities and millions of refugees and hundreds of thousands of people being tortured to death. You all stood with us at a time when nobody did, with the small organization and with the Syrian people. And I cannot begin to describe the impact that you all had, not just on educating kids and men and women, not just breaking sieges, but also advocating, on the Hill, talking to the media, and really communicating and reminding the Syrian people that they're not forgotten. And I can tell you, and God willing, one day all of you get to visit Syria, you will see how grateful they are for Central Arkansas specifically, and for the American people for what they've done to help them. Just to give you a very quick update, today there's been really a geopolitical earthquake in the Middle East overall. You're talking about a country that was the closest of allies to American adversaries, whether that be North Korea or China or Russia or Iran or Hezbollah or these other terrorist organizations that have done so much damage both to civilians in the region but also to the world. And they all are now either non-existent or much weaker in Syria than they have ever been. And for the first time ever, the Syrian people have a chance to really build a new country, write a new constitution. That's something that they're working on right now. And really forge a way ahead that allows Syria to be a place where people can live with dignity and where they can at least speak their minds, worship as they please, and not be subjected to the tyranny of the state. And we could see that in the many visits that we've been to Syria now, about 4 times since the fall of the Assad regime. What they constantly tell us is thank you for standing with us, but they're also asking for us to help guide them as they build their new republic in a very challenging region. In a place that has for 14 years went through a really horrible war. So a lot of people have lost a lot of loved ones, have seen horrible things happen, and still seek justice and accountability. And also a place that has to be rebuilt in so many parts of it from scratch. And SETF, this small Arkansas-based and headquartered NGO, not only played an important role through those 14 years thanks to you all, but today is also looked at as a place where we can provide connections to Western democracies, to other people that can help teach the Syrians of how to build their new country, but also a place that can help, stay with them through, again, a very complex and challenging period, but one that is truly, truly full of hope. And I want to just quickly mention something that we're going to talk about a lot more today, and you'll hear from my colleagues and from Colonel Harty, who I'm so proud to have here with us, about how this community and how families of American servicemen and women and a small American NGO in the US military were able to do something that the whole world failed at. And it includes the saving of the lives of 8,000 people and then bringing them back to their homes, thank God. And I won't go too long, so I want to, and hopefully after we speak we can have a chance for questions and answers, really anything on your mind. That's very important to me. And I want to introduce someone who, honestly, he makes me proud to be an American. He has shown not just obviously courageousness in the face of a very dire situation where the United States military plays a very important role in the enduring defeat of ISIS, but also in helping in every other way they can. And it's Colonel Harty. Lieutenant Colonel Harty is the squadron commander of the 1st Squadron, 102nd Cavalry Regiment, who led U.S. forces at the 10th Garrison in Syria in 2024 and worked alongside the Syria Free Army and communities across the United States, namely the community here in Arkansas, to protect and sustain 8,000 displaced civilians in Rukban Camp that lived under a horrific siege. And I think both Colonel Harty and some of the community members from here that traveled on Black Hawks and C-17s and C-130s and Chinooks and were out in the middle of the desert really helped save lives for a population that would have not survived had it not been for St. Peter's, had it not been for Central Arkansas, and had it not been for amazing heroes like Lieutenant Colonel Harty. I'll hand it over to you.
Everybody hear me? Usually I have an S6 guy or a signal guy that helps me with all this stuff, and I'm on my own tonight, so you give me a little patience. Well, hey, good evening. It's a truly honor to be here tonight, standing amongst all these people whose dedication, passion, and courage have changed the lives of so many Syrians out there, whether you know it or not. I'm especially grateful for the chance to meet everybody here, which I got to do a little bit before the event started, and to thank you all for the extraordinary work you did for Syria, and most importantly, closest to my heart, the people of the Rukban Camp. Many thanks to the Syrian Emergency Task Force, to Moaz, Natalie, Brett, Sully, and countless others, and to everyone who made this gathering possible, not just to celebrate the volunteers that help, but to honor the incredible resilience of the Syrian people. And I have to be honest, a lot of people asked me before I left, you're going to Arkansas to talk about Syria? I was like, yeah, I guess, I think so. And, but that is actually part of this story, which is part of the incredible story that we have with all the people that work together to help the Rukban and Syria in general. As Moaz and I often had said, the Rukban is the forgotten story of the Syrian Revolution and the Syrian Civil War. Situated in a barren stretch of the Badia in southern Syria, honestly, it's a place that looks more like the moon than it does Earth. Rukban has been home to stories of suffering and loss, but also of extraordinary kindness, community, and perseverance. In the end, it has been a story of hope in the face of unimaginable adversity. So when our unit first received orders to go to Al-Tanf Garrison, many of us had to go find a map and check out where the heck are they talking about us sending us, and what's there. And many of us, especially those of us that are a little bit older in age, had served in the last 20 years in Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia, various other places around the world. So those places, those experiences helped shape our understanding of what we thought we were getting into, and gave us a frame of reference. But those frame of references were very complicated and not accurate, as we're about to find out. Southern Syria turned out to be different, way different than any of us ever expected. It became one of those most profound experiences of all of our military careers. And one of the impressions we got when we landed at ATG was we asked, where the hell are we? And what have we gotten ourselves into? So the first 30 days of any unit's deployment, it's always a whirlwind. You get on the ground, you're learning the mission, you're trying to figure out who's who to talk to, and what's the reality on the ground based on what you've been briefed, far from reality. For us, our first 30 days included the constant threat of suicide drones coming in, long nights of uncertainty, and the steep learning curve of learning our new mission out there. But what really changed our deployment, and really our hearts, was a report that came in early April saying that the road into the Rukban, where all the goods and services came in through we called sanctioned smuggling routes, had been closed. And it was no accident. It was a deliberate act by the Assad regime designed to starve the Syrian Free Army and the Rukban Camp out. And it was very clear from the beginning that supplies were going to be running out within days, if not minutes. At first, the Rukban was a bit of a mystery to us. Previous units had never really ventured too far into the Rukban. There was some fear that there was maybe bad people there. But one of the things that we first figured out on the ground was like, well, the first thing you have to do to understand what's happening here is you got to get on the ground, whether it's good, the bad, the ugly. So it's one of the first things we did once we heard about the Siege and Starve campaign is we made our way to the Rukban and go there ourselves so we can figure out what's going on. Based on the reports that I was hearing at the time, I was bracing myself for a tense visit. You have 8,000 people starving, clinics running out of medical supplies, kids without baby formula. I didn't know what to expect. I expected the worst. I expected anger, despair, loss, anger at coalition forces for not doing more. I really did envision in my head, the worst case scenario, and so did my soldiers, and rightfully so. That would have been, totally, an expected way to act if you're starving to death and there's American forces on the ground that can help you. But that is not at all what we encountered. So driving into the Rukban from our little base, which was extremely austere by any base that you compare it to in the Middle East at the time, it's humbling. You have mud buildings, tents, a harsh desert landscape where the heat just bakes you on the floor. Yet in the midst of all this unimaginable hardship, there was life, there was community, and there was dignity. What struck me immediately was the overwhelming kindness of the people of the Rukban and what they displayed to us in one of the worst places in the world. During our first meeting with the residents, it was sad I could not provide many answers to them. I was there on a listening tour to hear what they had to say, what their issues were, but it really wasn't anything I could do at the moment, except to say, I hear your needs, and we will do everything in our power to bring help. But unfortunately, that doesn't bring baby formula to kids in need. It doesn't bring food to people that need it. There's that one time where hope sometimes isn't enough. You need more. But in all those conversations, the people that I had with the people in the Rukban, they gave us all the benefit of the doubt. And they were thankful that we were honest with them and told them exactly how it is. Because it's easy to promise people you're going to get something right away when it's not the case. But through all this, they treated us with kindness, with compassion, and with almost a brotherly love. So very quickly, we built some very deep friendships within the Rukban, sharing lamb meals, laughing over small jokes, problem solving with each other side by side. People invited us to our homes constantly, offering tea and lamb they could scarcely afford to make. And they spoke with grace, even though they were at an incredible loss and carried that weight of that loss. A quick story about a dear friend of mine I made in the Rukban, an 8-year-old girl named Safa, also known as the Rukban Princess. And she will always stay in my heart. Her family fled the civil war, and she was born in ISIS-controlled hospital. Her aunt, who was also a nurse at the Sham clinic that was in the Rukban, relayed the story to me about how ISIS tried to give her a militant name and then talked about possibly taking her away. Her family risked everything to sneak out, to flee south, and come to the Rukban. Now, this is an incredible story, but her story is not unique. Every family in that camp had a story. Stories that we couldn't imagine here in the United States. Stories that we couldn't imagine happening to our friends, to our families. There was unconscionable. But every time you hear another story, you realize the depth of courage it takes to simply survive, and how much it takes to withstand the desolate area they were in, how much it takes to continue to love people and to still laugh, despite how terrible the conditions were. But still, the suffering was real, and it was worsening. Food was nearly gone, medical supplies had run out. Parents searched desperately in the night for baby formula, walking miles under the stars, going house to house, trying to see who had more. And it was clear something had to be done. So the American military worked with our government to find a way to get humanitarian aid into the Rukban, into the 55, to relieve the suffering. And it's not a long process, or it is a long process. There's a lot of factors involved in trying to get humanitarian aid into another country, and it took many months of deliberate planning. But the siege was also taking a toll, not only on the residents, which I came to find out, but on my own soldiers. They had trained and worked with the Syrian Free Army every day and became close friends, close confidants, and developed relationships with their families. And they started to see these people suffer and do the same things that the people in Rukban were doing, finding baby formula, trying to make their way of life. And it was becoming very apparent to them that this situation was reaching an impasse. But as friends, to watch them suffer and almost powerless to stop it, it was heartbreaking. And I'll be honest, the low point of my command was during all this was going on, I had multiple my commanders, subordinate commanders, come to me and almost say the same things that the Rukban people said to me. They said, "Why can't you fix this? Why can't you stop this? Why can't you bring in aid tomorrow? Why can't you do all this?" And I gave them the same terrible answer that I had to give the people of the Rukban. I said, "We're trying, and it takes time, and we're doing the best we can." And that's not a good answer to somebody who's starving. It's not a good answer to somebody who's watching to starve. But then something remarkable happened. From Arkansas to New Jersey, people began to mobilize. It was a concerted effort. It was happening from my soldiers to their families individually, calling back to their homes and saying, "Hey, we need baby formula. We need vitamins. Stop sending me care gifts. Stop sending me care packages to make my life better. We need to fix this right now. We need to get material to our friends in Syria." So friends and families and volunteers stepped forward, to include those in this audience right here. Baby formula, vitamins, packages began arriving, and every package there was a message of hope that was going to be delivered to the Rukban. My two nieces I have, who I love to death, made bracelets, gathered all the toys that they didn't need anymore, including a Barbie that became very popular, and packed the box for the girls of the Rukban, which also included many Taylor Swift stickers. So if there's Taylor Swift stickers in the Rukban, you know where they came from. But these weren't just supplies. They were reminders, and they said to the people of the Rukban, "You're not forgotten. Someone sees you, someone cares." So finally, after many months of long planning and arduous sessions trying to figure out how to get humanitarian aid into the country, which it sounds like it's a very easy task, but it required incredible coordination between multiple countries and people that had countries that had various opinions on things. With Syria, we managed to make it happen, and humanitarian aid was finally delivered. At first, it was these high-energy biscuits, which, if you can imagine, are just USAID biscuits that have like high calorie value. They don't taste bad, but they're not great. I wouldn't want to live on them. But that was the first tranche of material we got in, and after that, we started to get more supplies in. And while we did all this, and it was a great day, and I'll tell you one of the moments in this deployment that stuck with me, because personally for me, it was between the moment of knowing that the Rukban was starving and the moment of knowing we were getting humanitarian aid. I mean, it was months. It really was. It was probably about 2 months, 2.5 months, and it was a hard 2 months. I'll say it was hard for me, but that doesn't compare in comparison to what the people of the Rukban had to suffer. But I felt personally responsible for making sure that we got them the aid. But one of the greatest moments that I've had in my career was when the aid flew in for the first time into his unimproved runway, C-130s that they'd never brought in, and it's not a runway, it's just a bunch of sand, came flying in, and they landed. And there was humanitarian aid on the ground. And our soldiers brought it, picked it up, and then we began the long process of making sure we got it to the right people. But the sight I saw one day when we first brought it out to bring to SETF's distribution point was seeing the American flag on these trucks that were bringing out humanitarian aid to the people of Syria. And I said that, well, this is one of those days where you're proud to be an American, because this is what we do. That's what we've done in the past, and what we'll continue to do. Because U.S. Army is great at breaking things. That's what we do. That's our job. But at the same time, we can fix things. And those soldiers that were combat men, they turned into humanitarians that day. And it was a remarkable thing to watch that American flag fly with those first tranche of humanitarian aid come in. So while this is all going on, behind the scenes, our military doctors on ATG were performing emergency care for Rukban citizens facing life-threatening injuries. This is the only place in the Middle East, and I would argue, I think, the only place in the world that military doctors were performing these type of procedures on non-Americans. So during this time, we performed over 28 C-sections, emergency C-sections, hernia repairs, treatment of gunshot wounds, venomous snake bites on children, and went on and on and on. And our doctors treated the people of the Rukban as if they were their own children. And it was an incredible thing. And nobody else in the theater, for us soldiers, had ever experienced that. Nobody had needed an OBGYN surgeon to come to their camp. When I asked for one, everybody looked at me like, wait, what? I'm like, trust me, I need it. But it was an amazing thing to watch them go to work and bring in the families of the Rukban, especially those that were in desperate need of life-limiting eyesight. And they, like I said, they took care of the families of the Rukban just as they would with our own soldiers. And it's an unreported story, but it's something that I take pride in that they did. And they worked with me and we tried to make every Syrian that we thought had a life-threatening injury come in and try to help them, because that was the right thing to do at the time. So of course, I can't talk about any of this happening without talking about the Syrian Emergency Task Force. We call them SETF, but because we're in the military, we always take an acronym and turn it into a stupid word, so I call them SETF. So that's just how we are. It's a character defect. But during this time, SETF, and prior to this too, were intricately involved. Mawaz, Natalie, we had daily calls trying to figure this out, because you come to find out that SETF, okay, I like SETF. It's my military term in me, sorry. They knew what was happening on the ground sometimes more than I did, because they had a special connection. They had Mawaz talking to people on the ground. They had the people from SETF that were on the ground in the Rukban. So it became incredibly important to try to figure out what is happening here on the ground truth in the Rukban. But what they did was nothing short of extraordinary. From bringing the doctors to the Sham clinic, Dr. Kevin, The SETF team on the ground, Moaz, Natalie Soley, all the other people that came through, all the doctors. What happened is this became some sort of weird family that I never expected to happen in ATG. Thought I was going as a combat soldier into a combat mission, and I'm going to do combat stuff, and little did I know, it became a humanitarian aid operation, but it ended up being one of the best things that could ever have happened to us. And everybody there worked day and night to try to help the Rukban. But the thing is, while all of us were doing this on the ground at ATG and trying to figure out how to make this stuff all happen, there was something happening behind the scenes, which I kind of knew about a little bit, and I probably don't still know fully because I think some of it was kept from me for plausible deniability. But it wasn't just one group. It was an extraordinary coalition of people, an unlikely coalition of people, of the Syria Emergency Task Force, the community here in Arkansas, the community in New Jersey of all our soldiers that were having their families send back, instead of care packages of things for them for comfort items, to send back baby formula and vitamins and things for the children. The U.S. military. And we'll be honest, the U.S. military is not known for this. This is not our forte. We're good at breaking things, not great at some of this stuff sometimes. The Syrian Free Army, which was our partner, working hand in hand with us to try to make this happen. And really the people of the Rukban themselves, who are kind, who are patient, who believed in us, and were willing to give us the benefit of doubt that we're going to try to make this happen for them. All these people came from different backgrounds, different languages, different walks of life, but all of us were united in the response. And as this went on, and we finally got some distance from the humanitarian crisis and things were stabilized for a little bit, and as my tour was starting to come to the end, in December of 2024, another remarkable event happened that none of us saw coming, and that was the fall of the Assad regime and the liberation of Syria. And I'll tell you from a personal perspective, and talking to the Syrian Free Army commander, people in the Rukban, the different militia leaders, there wasn't a lot of hope at that time before that. They thought the game was up. They said, hey, well, let's go try to figure out how we can make the best deal. It didn't look like the Assad regime was going to fall anytime. And what happened in early December was extraordinary and caught us all by surprise, in a good surprise. But it's had some great things happen. The Syrian Free Army, who our soldiers trained for a year, although we had left already, helped lead the assault north to defeat the Assad army, to seize back Palmyra, to take back the Iranian militia groups, outposts, and the Assad regime's outposts. And those were our brothers that we had trained for years. So watching them from afar do that was incredibly. It's something I can't describe because it was so amazing to watch it happen. And for many of us that had served in Iraq or Afghanistan or other places, we never got a good end of the story. Iraq is Iraq. Afghanistan, well, that's been talked about. But it almost seemed like for the first time, we were about to see a good end to the story. What we were there for had been achieved. Syria was about to be liberated. The Assad regime had fell. And a new hope was ready for Syria. But what you all did here, collectively, is you brought more than aid. You brought hope. And I've heard people malign the idea of hope as hope is not a strategy and yada, yada, yada. But that's not true. And you can say maybe hope's not a strategy, but hope is a thing. Hope is a thing that keeps humans alive, that gives them the hope and the energy to continue for the next day. And what all of you did here was you gave them that chance. You gave them that glimmer that they weren't forgotten, even if the rest of the world forgot them. The people in Arkansas didn't forget you. The people in New Jersey didn't forget you. We were all here to help. Even if it was in small ways, minuscule ways, it was enough to show somebody that we cared. But most importantly, and this is something I told my soldiers, is that what you did, what my soldiers did, what SETF did, what all the organizations did, is that you allowed them to hold on just a little bit longer. Just enough to see Syria liberated. To see the dream of them going home to a free Syria, back to their homes, after years in the Rukban Camp, in desolate conditions, when they thought they had no hope, when they thought it was just about making a deal with the Assad regime, and then praying for the best. And that's something that everybody in this room did here. While freedom is difficult, complicated, and it brings uncertainty, the stalemate has ended. Syria is free, and we pray for the success of our free Syria. But Syria, while free, still requires incredible work. The rebuilding process for a nation that was in a war-torn civil war for over a decade is incredible. The work is not done yet. Refugees remain a serious challenge, and the work to support a free Syria is just beginning. So as we close a dark chapter on Syria history, we're hopefully about to open a new one, a new hopeful chapter. And that's where we all can chip back in. This is no time to rest on our laurels. This is no time to give up and say we won. This is a time to recommit ourselves to helping the Syrian government, to helping the Syrian people, and to providing them the life that they all deserve. You know, the lesson that I took away from this year in Syria, among many others, was that the challenges of our time, whether in the Rukban or any other place in the world, it can't be solved by one organization, by one person, by one military. It doesn't happen like that. It never has. But when we link arms and we share resources, we act from a place of compassion, understanding the humanity of the situation, extraordinary things have happened, and that is what we have seen. The people of the Rukban showed us resilience, and you, through your hard work and all the time you volunteered at your own time, you showed them solidarity. Together, we all created something that was stronger than the siege, which is hope. So hope may not be a strategy, but it works. Tonight, as I leave here, I want you to remember that hope is not an abstract concept. Hope is built. Hope is built by human hands, by a collective effort, by the belief that even in the darkest night, we can bring on the light. And you, every one of you here, are absolutely proof of that. So I thank you for tonight, and thank you for all you did for Syria.
Thank you so much, Colonel Harty. Oh, you can stay here, Mr. Kevin, Dr. Rao. So quickly, we have a couple amazing Arkansans here with us today who live down the street, who also traveled to Rukban via available space on military air to treat people for the first time on a medical mission, because there had never been doctors in this camp. Can you imagine 10 years without a dentist? 10 years needing his surgery that you couldn't get. And so, Dr. Rao, it's an honor for me to introduce you tonight.
Okay. Thank you. I won't be long. I know it's hard to follow that. It was just a wonderful testimony of resilience of the Syrian people, and all the things that Colonel Harty said are really true. That the people themselves, the spirit, you said dignity and grace, and all those things describe the people of Rukban very well. I went in as a psychologist, so I was a psychology professor at UCA for 31 years and a licensed psychologist, and been involved in a lot of refugee trauma work for the last 10 or 11 years in the Middle East. And so my role in going to Rukban last year was to go in and to evaluate how the children were doing. There were something like 17 or 1,800 children, I think, in the camp, and they had 7 or 8 different schools. And so I went to most of the schools to talk with the teachers, interview teachers, and just watch the kids and how they interacted. And with the exception of maybe one school, I was just greatly impressed at the energy and the hope that they had. And hope is a big word. I mean, it's huge. And I was expecting the worst. I've been in other camps and seen the despair and seen the lack of hope. And I really was expecting that. I was really expecting the worst, given as Natalie said, the lack of medical care, and as Colonel Harty said, that the food supply, even though it was, the underground food supply was cut off. I mean, it really looked pretty dire, and I was not expecting very good things. But when I got there, I was greatly impressed with. We were chaperoned by the Syrian Free Army soldiers. We were outside the Al-Tanf garrison there. We were right outside the camp in a housing complex there, but we were escorted by the Syrian Free Army soldiers, and so that's who we worked with. But even the soldiers themselves were upbeat and positive, and I was expecting a lot of despair. So I think it's a testimony to the hope that had been going on, the aid that was coming, the fact that Moaz had been there already on the ground, that the U.S. Army was there. And by the way, I would have breakfast every morning. I would go inside the garrison, the U.S. garrison there, and have breakfast with the soldiers. I was an early riser. Everybody else slept in till 10 in the morning because they stayed up to 3 in the morning talking, and I would go to bed early. But most mornings I had breakfast with the soldiers there, and I just want to tell you guys, they did an incredible job there. And to a person, the man and women that I would speak with at the breakfast, they were glad to be there. As harsh as the conditions were, they were glad to be involved in helping Rukban and helping the refugees. And as Colonel Harty said, it's an experience they didn't expect, and yet they really were overwhelmed with the need, but also the fact that they could make a difference, that they could ask people to send baby formula and other supplies in. So it was just a great experience to see that. So you can be very proud of the U.S. military, the Army, and they just did a great job there. But I do want to say that psychology research does show that there are 5 major conditions necessary for people to recover from trauma and disaster. And the first one is obviously get away from the danger itself. Well, they couldn't because they were in this deconfliction zone and they were under constant threat. And then the second part is once you get out of the danger is a sense of calming, of physical calming and psychological calming The third component is infrastructure. Well, they didn't really have much infrastructure there. I think they had one pipeline of water that came in from Jordan, and it was intermittent, right? It wasn't constant, you know. Yeah, a few hours a day, and so they didn't have that. But the last two components, the fourth one is community, and the other one is hope. And those two components they had. And the community of the Syrian people there in Rukban was tremendous. And you could see in the schools and the teachers and in the students, every school we went to, they had a program for us. There was dancing, there was a lot of happiness there. And they really were glad because, as Colonel Harty said, they were not forgotten. And that's a huge component of hope, that when you know that people know where you are, they understand your needs, even though they may not can help, at least you're not forgotten. And in fact, that you're valuable enough to other people that you do matter to them. And we all need that as humans, right? And so that was what they had, and they had the hope. But they also have, it's amazing to see, if you've ever been to the Middle East, the hospitality there is incredible. And in hospitality, wherever you go, we drank gallons of tea. And I don't know where it came from. It just shows up. But it's like manna from heaven. You have tea manna, I guess, but and lamb manna, I think that was. But it just showed up. But the hospitality was there, and the dignity and the grace was there through all of their suffering, through all of their lack. They were able to still have that. And that does build up hope. That does build resilience when they can give back. And so I think that was important. So my takeaway was I was expecting the worst. And I was greatly surprised at really how well. And there were some people who really were struggling, obviously. But overall, the work that was done here and in New Jersey, when the aid started coming in, that was a lifeline. And letters of hope, you may talk about letters of hope, Natalie, I don't know if you will or not, but writing letters to them, to the kids, was powerful. So for those of you who are involved, don't minimize what you did. It was huge. And it was just an honor for me to go and to be able to serve and help where I could. But it was just, it's an experience that it's hard to describe and hard to put into words. But I think, and some of the Syrian people I talked to, some of the teachers would tell me, please tell the people, thank you. Please tell the people who are giving, who are sending you here, tell them thank you. And it's so nice to know that we're not forgotten. So just want to leave that. And by the way, nobody's going to promote Moaz. He certainly won't. But this guy is relentless. He has, I don't know if he sleeps. I don't think he sleeps. But I just sit back and watch all the things he's done and the effort he's given over the years of making all these happen. And then he has people like Natalie working for him, and Sullivan, and so many others, Jerry. And it's a small group of people making a huge impact out there in the world, and then be able to work with U.S. military. And you can be proud of these guys. They were great.
Okay, next we would like to hear from Mr. Henry Van Leerup, who also was practicing in Rukban, taking care of people.
Thank you. Yeah, I was fortunate enough to go on the last mission, just a few weeks before the regime change. Oh, he's a handsome fella. And I believe I was the only nurse that went on the medical trips, which was quite something for me. I will tell you that flying in a military helicopter is not comfortable. I don't recommend it at all. Not even a drink. But and I won't talk for too long, but my big takeaway from Rukban was I didn't know what to expect when I went there. I had no clue. As much as we'd been involved and talked about it and everything, it was still a real eye-opener to get there. The Syrian Free Army were incredible. They were our protectors, they were our drivers. They followed us. I couldn't go to the bathroom without somebody following me with a rifle. but they were absolutely wonderful. The people, what really surprised me the most in the first day or so was how grateful they were. There was no talk of, oh, what did you bring, or could you bring more, or anything else. They were just thrilled that we were there. We were treated like angels from heaven or something. It was amazing. And the fact that these people had been here for 8 years, some of these kids had spent their whole lives in the camp. Can you imagine being 8, 9 years old and never seen a tree? I think we drove for about an hour to where the gardens were to see a tree, but they're happy. The kids were happy. They played, they danced. They, as the good doctor said, they put on routines for us when we went to the schools. Talk about hope. These people still had it, and I don't know how. Most of us probably wouldn't have survived. I spent about 20 years working in pediatrics, and what shocked me was none of these kids were vaccinated. So if something like chickenpox or measles went through the camp, God knows how many they would have lost. And I don't have facts and figures, but just anecdotally talking to the people in the camp, the infant mortality rate in the United States is less than 0.5%. In Rukban Camp, it was 20%. So they lost 1 in 5 babies. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I mean, third world countries in Africa have an infant mortality rate of maybe 5%. In Rukban, it was 20. I saw some very sick children. We had a great team. The team that everybody was highly motivated. The young lady that was with us was active U.S. military. She'd been stationed there, and she went back with us just to help, which was fantastic. Half of us didn't speak Arabic at all, which was interesting. But the whole experience was absolutely amazing. What else can I say? Oh, Colonel Harty, actually, we had dinner. I don't know if you remember this. We had dinner, and because I was the old guy in the room, they put me at the front next to him. And because I can't cross my legs and sit on the floor, they even brought me a little table and chair. And there was this beautiful meal, if you can just imagine it, of a sheep's head sitting right in front of us. And Colonel Harty, having been there for a year, goes, "Hey, what's this? This is what you do." And he grabs a bit of bread and he goes, "Go for the cheeks, it's the best bit." And he was right. It was delicious. But yeah, overall, my biggest regret is we couldn't spend longer. We had some logistical issues getting there, but I could have spent a month and just kept working. I mean, it was absolutely amazing. And the best food we have was actually at the garrison. And they had wonderful showers. That actually worked. But there's one particular gentleman in the Syrian Free Army who drove me every day. His name was Mohammed. And one day we walked out to get in the truck, and Moaz said, "Henry, can you drive a stick shift?" And I said, "Sure." So he said, "Mohammed, get in the back. Henry's going to drive." And it's about a 40-minute drive through the desert, right? There's no road. You're just bombing through the desert in a 20-year-old Land Cruiser. And I swear the whole way, Mohammed was behind me in the back, clutching his rifle and praying the whole time. But anyway, yeah, it was a wonderful experience. I can't wait to go back. So.
I'm really honored to introduce our next guest, who most of you probably know, Brett Hardison. Thank you, Brett.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brett Hardison. I've been with the SETF team since 2016, and the Wisdom House started out of Arkansas. The support for the Wisdom House started out of Arkansas, and so many of you have been involved in that. I'd like to focus in on where Colonel Harty talked about in spring of 2024, when the supply roads were cut off to Rukban, and Muaz had talked to Jerry and said, okay, we need baby formula and different things like this. And as most of you know who know Jerry Adams, we were at church, and after church one day in May, he comes over and says, we need to figure out how to ship baby formula to Syria. And I'm like, okay. And so Natalie Larison, amazing Natalie Larison, and I got together, and I started researching how to buy baby formula. We we're able to buy baby formula through Sam's and order 36-ounce boxes of it. And then we added in educational supplies. Mona Mustafa, Muaz's mother, is a font of knowledge and connections, and just the simple thing of putting pipe cleaners and beads as filler in the boxes that we ship was just so appreciated by the children. It didn't need to be an extravagant toy or anything major. Construction paper and crayons. And so we got our inventory together, and we put together a system where every 2 weeks we got together here at St. Peter's, and our team came in. Sandra Espy came in and set up boxes in the afternoon and got us prepped for it. Chris Smith came in every day and filled out customs forms. And then we moved into buying medications through Blessings International in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is a no tax, low cost. We were able to do that. Mary Ann Black was able to get that orchestrated through us. Dr. Larison was able to sign off on our medications for our heart meds, our antibiotics, just so many different things. And even to the point we were sending sunblock, just any little thing. And I think June was our first box. Between June and the end of September, we mailed 8 mailings and shipped over 140 36-ounce boxes of baby formula, thousands of dollars worth of medication. And during that time, we had to figure out a very creative way to ship into Syria. And Sandra with Postal Annex her and her team sat there. They filled out our forms and stuck to our boxes. I'd walk in there with 17 boxes, and they would just be so patient and kind and help us get that put together. So this community, there are so many names. I can name Chuck and Laura Larison, Sandra Espy, so many people from UCA, Philip Bailey, Leslie Grable, Leah Horton, who organized our soup supper that we raised funds to be able to send formula over. Dan Allen, everyone in this room is Morning Rotary, UCA. The entire community came together. Jeff Kelly, Julie with First Pres. I mean, our community, everyone in this room either contributed financially or physically to make this happen. And it was one of the most profound experiences of my life, because every Wednesday, Natalie and I would be on a call with the 4 gentlemen that ran Rukban, and we had Miriam and Allah in Cairo, Egypt, were our translators. And these ladies were a force to be reckoned with, I promise you. Amazing people. But this was an effort that was just a worldwide effort, and this community came together and supported it so strongly. And I think you need to give yourselves a hand. This is just, thank you so much.
Thank you, Brett. This is really emotional because it's been almost a decade that we've been doing this. And looking around the room, I see just all these faces, and every face I see, I can come up with a story of what you've contributed yourself. I'd like to welcome someone to the stage, Mr. Jeff Kelly. If you can come join me up here. And he's not the only Arkansan that went to Syria with us since liberation, and this includes Jerry Adams. But Jeff's story is pretty spectacular, and I'll let you tell it.
Brett, are you still around? That sounded like a testimony to me, Brett. Marvelous Episcopal testimony. Colonel Harty, your compassion is contagious. We thank you for what you've done and what you continue to do. We felt it. We sensed it. My thanks to Jerry Adams and to you, Mawaz, and you, Natalie, for extending an invitation for me and for my youngest daughter, adult youngest daughter, to go to Wisdom House in May of this year. We arrived at Wisdom House. Natalie was with us. Tell me the name of Miriam was with us as well. And the children embraced us, their shining faces. They were carrying life-size posters of my deceased wife. And of course, that was overwhelming to me. As the children embraced us and kissed us, gave us roses, we met with the teachers at Wisdom House. Now, Wisdom House at this time is not in Idlib. It has been bombed out by the Assad regime. It's in a little hamlet from near Aleppo, near Aleppo, and there's a great hunger to go back, of course, to the original structure. So we talked to the teachers. We met in the classrooms. We saw the Smurfs, the Goldilocks, the different kinds of classes. The children were just wonderful to be around. And then I had a chance to talk to the principal, Mr. Munir. And I asked Mr. Munir what were his hopes. And he said, well, we want to go back to Idlib, to our original home. We want to go back and build it up. And I asked him, what would that look like? I'm thinking, it's in ruins. Are those pictures showing? Yeah, the ruins, it's in ruins at this time. And I'm thinking in Western dollars, $80,000, $100,000, he would say. And he said, well, if we could scrape together $8,000 or $9,000, we could build back. I was so overjoyed, so relieved and encouraged, I spontaneously said, it will be done, Mr. Munir. And because of you and families like yours, $12,000 has been raised. It has been done. The bricks have arrived. Natalie can give us the lowdown on it soon. The walls are going up. Teachers are coming back. Some may be in tents until they get permanent housing. But it's on its way. It's an exciting time. Now we need to get together as we undergird and make sure they can go forward. And I make that segue to you, Natalie.
Oh, yes. Oh, you guys are killing me tonight. It's really powerful to hear all these memories. So this is our original Wisdom House, and so we had the Wisdom House about 4 years, and then in 2020, the front lines reached our city, and everyone had to run away. And this includes Tomorrow's Dawn, which is our high school for girls. We have a kindergarten and a high school, actually. And these are your letters of hope on the wall. And I'd like to just take a poll of the room of who has written a letter of hope before. Oh, that's cool. Thank you for your letters of hope. They mean more than you might even imagine, truly, and we are still sending them. And so if you can't donate or want to do something that's from your heart, please send me a letter of hope. But these are on the walls of the original Wisdom House. You can see that someone tried to tear them off of the walls. So these were regime soldiers who came in to this destroyed Wisdom House. There's no ceiling. This is actually like the basement because they were not able to look like a school. They were under threat for years and years. And this time around, they can actually go outside. Their school bus can look like a school bus. They're no longer worried about schools being targeted. And we can actually go visit now. So the regime tried to tear off the letters of hope, but they were sticky and they stayed. So we need a new round of letters of hope once we rebuild the Wisdom House, the Norma Kelly Wisdom House. I have to be very quick, and there are many more names that I need to say, but I just have to say Leah Horton, Pamela Woodard George, Terry Daly, who made, you're the reason why we're here, okay? You and Jerry. Marianne, Thea Spatz, Dr. Reva Brown, Henry and Kathleen, Claudia Davis, Madeline. Look, our whole families are involved by default, okay? Marty and Steve, Dan and Nancy, Shelley, Jack Frost, Ruth, Kate, I think Kate's here, Dahlia and Zaina, Darlington, hi, and Bill and Julie Atkinson. And I hope I said, did I say Marty and Steve? Guys, I'm missing people. I'm so sorry. Barbara Satterfield. And Claudia, yeah, I can't say enough. Okay, so thank you so much. And now I will pass it on to our final speaker tonight, Mr. Jerry Adams.
Wow, this is, can you hear me? Yeah, good. Well, I don't have a lot to say other than just thank everybody that's come. And it goes back a long way. You know, I met Moz in March of 2016, and he's really screwed up my life, really, actually. But I've had a chance to travel to Turkey, to Syria. Matter of fact, I'm going back to Syria next Thursday, and we've kind of done a flip. I mean, we really were trying to save people and do all the things you need to do up until the Assad regime fell on December 8th. But I think it's really now an effort to do what we can to build a new Syria. And so it's actually, the ground is changing under our feet. But things like the Women's Center and the Wisdom House, we need your help to continue on that. So we're not at the end of anything. What Jeff is doing is really a transition back to where it was. We have an unending amount of work to do there, but continue to support the Wisdom House. I'm actually going back using my last 14 years working with colleges and universities to help channel Saudi University into Damascus University, focused on economic development. And I've got an interesting team already created to do that, and we're having conversations. We're not sure how this is going to work, but universities have an important role of building talent, and we're going to try to accelerate that into areas that have economic traction. So, and that's what I did in Arkansas. We've proven it. It really looks great. And I think we have a chance to do that. And that's being done under the SETF situation. But working with the new government that's tasked with doing everything right. And he has neighbors like Netanyahu, once a week Lebanon and once a week Syria. So there's no straight line in terms of what this government has to do. And they're doing a good job. But they have some unruly neighbors that are actually no longer in Syria, which is even better. So anyhow, but I want to thank all of you. There's food across the hall there, and we really want you to stay and mingle, because each one of you probably could have we could have an open mic session, and we could send this around, because all of you have been present in so many different ways for this organization. ULR, children, ULR, Clinton School, I start naming them, I'm going to leave something out, but Little Rock, Conway, we got up to Russellville thanks to Terry, and other places. So it's just enormous thank you to everybody that's had a role in this, and continue to do this, because we're not there yet, and we have ways to go.
And I do want to say just one more quick thing. As we are trying to, keep the Wisdom House going through the next school year, and we are planning on starting school at the end of September in our new Wisdom House, you can sponsor a student for $30 a month, and that's our ask, is if you are able to sponsor a student at that recurring donation level. If we get 100 people, then that's 100 kids. So, there is information on this in the parish hall where we do have snacks. And I'm going to pass it to Moaz to ask if there's questions and answers, but if you do want to mosey over there and start with your snacks, but we do want that opportunity for questions.
Bless you. Amen. There's a wooden box out there. And you all, these are kids that are amazing, that are learning English, that know that Americans that have stood by them all along. The Wisdom House and the Women's Center in the high school for women, whenever Natalie was talking about how the front line got close and they had to leave, at first nobody wanted to leave. And they're getting bombarded by barrel bombs. There's obviously always the threat of chemical weapons. I mean, all kinds of conventional, unconventional weapons by Iran, Russia, and Assad at the time. And the reason they were convinced to leave was that they knew that when they left, they wouldn't be a burden on someone else. That when they left, they would, with our support, with your support, be a light to the communities they went to. And that's exactly what happened. Our high school is the best high school for women, that is completely free, that is graduating people that are either, opening up their own businesses or going on to college, things that they would have never had a chance to do. It's so powerful. And those kids, many of them, all of them displaced and many of them orphans, grow up knowing that it was Americans that stood by them when the whole world left them, even when other governments couldn't help, when they couldn't understand why they were getting bombed. And you can see it in the pictures that they draw and how different they are from others. The kids in the Rukban draw pictures of American military planes, and sometimes they'll write, Muaz or Nada, like someone's on it, and it's food coming in. Kids in other parts of Syria only knew how to draw airplanes that bombed them. That was the only plane they ever saw. And the same with the Wisdom House. You should see their drawings and see their smiles that just never existed before. So please, over 1,000 kids we've graduated in the 9 years that we've worked just at the Wisdom House. So just know this isn't like an arbitrary school, and this isn't like a big, NGO like the Red Cross or something where you're kind of adopting someone, but you're also going into the bureaucracy. This is money or support that goes directly there. And like Natalie said earlier, your letters of hope, your communication, your engagement is even more valuable than even the financial support that comes. So please consider being a reoccurring donor to the Norma Wisdom House or to the Women's Center as they go back to their homes. And I want to give a chance for a few questions. I know we can also mingle more, and there's food next door, but if there's some questions right now you'd like to ask Colonel Harty or any one of the speakers, please raise your hand. Yes. So you guys know, find Pamela. Soup for Syria cookbooks are a great Christmas present. They are these really famous chefs, including Anthony Bourdain, who passed away, but before they had donated their recipes to this, to this book. And then we have these photos of Syrian men, women, children, young and old. And so you go through these different really cool soups and then pictures of these people who your donation goes to. So if you're interested in buying a Soup for Syria book, it's for a very good cause, and you can talk to Pamela about that. I think there was another question over here. Yes, sir. No. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so to repeat the question, and correct me if I say it wrong, are the politics settled over there? there's a lot of different factions. Is there still war? Is there still fighting in Syria? That's the question. And it's a very good question. Look, Syria is incredibly complex geographically speaking, both in demographics and in physical geography of the country, which also creates more complexities as Syria is trying to kind of come out from this rubble, from a very, very, very dark time. No more planes bombing civilians. That's ended. So Russian planes, regime planes, you know, those helicopters and the MiGs and the Su, whatever, those are done. There were dungeons across Syria that tortured people to death, including Americans who we knew and we've worked with their families. Some survived, some did not. Those dungeons where people were tortured on a regular basis in the most horrific ways no longer exist. The idea of a chemical weapon being used again in Syria, which unfortunately before December 8th was a normal thing. None of us would have been surprised if there was yet another chemical weapons attack. That is no longer a threat. But Syria sits in a place where you have had 14 million people displaced, both internally and externally, out of a population of 23 million. So imagine in the US, that's like 200 million people displaced. You have most of the infrastructure of the country completely destroyed. You have a lot of people that are still seeking loved ones. I mean, the amount of mass graves that the Syrian Emergency Task Force has identified in Syria contain, just what we know about, contain over 600,000 people that have been buried in mass graves. No one knows whose bones are whose. Those are major challenges in terms of transitional justice, in terms of how can people live again together and move forward that are there. And then you have both in northeast Syria, where US troops are still there, and we have a partner force there called the SDF, the importance of ensuring that that partner force is integrated with the Syrian government and the Ministry of Defense, to where when the US pulls out, our partners are safe and Syria is united in all of its military factions. That's something we're working on. The partner force that Colonel Harty trained and supported and his troops supported, they've been integrated into the new Syrian government. In the south, in Sweden, there has been, unfortunately, violence that initially happened from kind of localized problems that became bigger and that were, in a lot of ways, instigated and kind of more kerosene was poured on the fire over there in a way. But right now, there is no fighting. Things are settled, although there is an important process of reconciliation and ensuring everyone feels like they're in their country and that their government looks out for them. So the challenges of rebuilding, the challenges of transitional justice and ensuring these communities can again sort of live together, even if one village slaughtered another during the war or whatever. And the challenges of ensuring, especially as US troop withdrawal may happen at one point, that when that happens, Syria is left in a place where ISIS does not rear its head again, where Iran and Hezbollah do not come back, are there. And one final challenge is also Russia. So Russians lost all of their bases, including one that was on the borderline with Rukban, and I went there and got some memorabilia, but there's still 2 bases that are left, and ensuring that Syria does not feel like the Syrians don't like the Russians because they killed so many of them. At the same time, they're dealing with all these different major powers and trying to figure out how to move out of this. Syrians don't want to see a war for the next 7,000 years with anyone. And ensuring finally too that the Israeli government understands that Syria is not interested in ever being a threat to Israel, and possibly in the future it can come to a long-term peace deal with Israel. These are all not easy things to do, but they all are possible. And finally, a constitution in Syria that is adopted by all. That's what we're working on drafting now, and SETF plays an important role in advising the government. I mean, when Jerry and I were there, every like minister of government, I think, at some point came and met us and talked to us and asked, how could we do this and that? And there's a lot of lessons to learn from the United States. We have an imperfect democracy. We always try to perfect it more and more, but it's something that they can, take the good things that we have and also learn from mistakes that we or other people have. These are all complex challenges. Syria is still in a very sensitive place, but when you go there now and you talk to people, they have a renewed hope. And this time the hope isn't that atrocities will end. Atrocities for the most part have ended. But their hope is that Syria becomes a representative democracy, which I think is the only way you keep this country together. It's not about being ideally, I love democracy and I want... It's actually how you keep a country that is so diverse ethnically, religiously, geographically together, is making sure that they all feel that they're part of this process. And that's the role that we're trying to support the Syrian government in. I hope that answers the question. Sorry I went on and on. And we can go to the food place and continue our conversations, but...
Food across the parish hall?
Food place.